Hey, Brian. Nice to meet you guys.
Let's see at the end, if you don't mind. How's your day going?
What's going on? How about you?
Busy. Yeah. Things never slow down around here. Just because we're required to identify ourselves fully. Joe Lipinski, Special Agent.
Right.
So,
Check. Thanks.
any chance I can borrow your CAP card or an ID on you real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta get some bio information real fast. You have an idea why we're here today?
I can speculate.
I'm sure you know it. It's related to the Gallagher investigation. I'm the main case agent working this. I've got a team of guys that are helping me out, me and of course being one of them. And I'm trying to talk to people who are involved, who heard stuff. And I need to go through and figure out what you heard, what the timeline of when things were reported, and sort of what your interaction's been with SOC Gallagher related to this investigation.
Yeah, so I don't know if my name's brought up probably because I was his troop chief.
Yep.
So I was a senior enlisted in Iraq, this last deployment from February to September of 2017.
Okay.
He was operating up in Mosul, Alpha Platoon. Overall, great platoon. I don't know if you need this or not. I mean, they were a great platoon on paper at the time. You know, Eddie Gallagher was a rock star.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's got every single SEAL qualification. He's got.
Yes, he's aware.
Yeah.
Great service member. And following him, I had 2 other platoons, so I had 3 platoon. I was a senior enlisted for 3 platoons.
Okay.
So my visibility out of all 3 Alpha platoon they were rock stars.
Okay.
I'm from the outside looking in. Never would have suspected any, misconduct, any, hate and discontent for leadership. It was they worked well together. So it's surprising when I started hearing some rumblings that things weren't going well up north.
Okay.
And I had counseled him verbally over the phone on a couple of different occasions. I wasn't angry. It was just more of like, hey man, your leadership style, it's not working well with these guys. I want you to sit down and listen to them, hear their voices, because there's some legitimate complaints. If it's 3 or 4, 6, 8 guys doing it, something's wrong. So, we exchanged dialogue over the course of the deployment. We were very disaggregated. We had 5 platoons spread all across Iraq. I was down in Al-Assad, so it wasn't very easy to get to Mosul a lot. I did make it up there. I did operate with him. When I got up there, everything was fine. This was even after I heard some rumblings about guys who just weren't happy with how things were being run up there. I went up there, I operated him. I went on numerous combat operations with him. Just, kind of get an idea. I'd like to assess my chiefs. Always on the up and up, but I mean, you see what you see. I was there, and it was good stuff going on, and nobody said anything. And then later, we want to change this, we want to change that, and there was rumblings, and I'm like, fellas, man, like, I'm seeing one thing, you're telling me the other. What mom and dad do when mom and dad are gone.
Exactly.
The kids are gone, they're gonna do shit.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a sense they're putting on a show for you when you're there.
Absolutely. So, and nobody was forthcoming with anything at the time. On deployment, there was nothing that came to my level.
Okay.
And I'm pretty much next in line as chief. So whether the officers were talking, I'm not sure, but I was left out of it.
Okay.
We got back.
Before we get to
Go
that,
ahead.
let's get back, because there's a couple questions I don't want to forget about.
Absolutely.
So just to clarify, when you say you counsel them, are we talking like mentoring type counseling?
Mentoring. There was
Okay.
nothing written,
Okay.
nothing verbal. This wasn't anything going against his character or as a leader or
Okay.
tactically inefficient. This was me going more of like a professional development.
Gotcha. Because
Like,
sometimes
yep,
your counseling is
absolutely.
in like
Counseling is a very
disciplinary.
broad term. I apologize
No,
for
no.
not being clear. Yeah, it was more just kind of leadership development. Like, hey man, you got to have a situational approach to things. Guys are different. You know,
Okay.
you're a seasoned warrior. You're dealing with guys who've never been in combat.
Gotcha.
So you know they know what they know. Type of stuff.
So as the Master Chief for multiple platoons, were you the senior enlisted equivalent to like Lieutenant Commander Bryce's position?
I was his right hand man. I was his
Okay.
enlisted
That's what I
right hand
thought.
man. Yep.
What sort of rumblings, what sort of things did you hear were going on?
I had heard at one point there was some talk of putting guys in danger.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, it's relevant, subjective.
Okay.
You've never been in combat, he has. People shooting at you is dangerous.
Yep.
So I need more. Like, you know, he put us in situations that was bad, it should have never happened. And I'm like, all right, you know, board among his peers, we could listen to Eddie's case, and at the end of the day, I mean, you have a bunch of guys who have never been to combat talking about a guy who took him out and got him shot at. It's like, I need more, man, you know. There was some things about some petty theft.
Yeah.
And I had called Eddie and said, hey man, I'm hearing some shit about stealing. Please tell me fucking nobody's stealing up there. And he was like, bro, it was some like power bars and shit out of a gift bag and whatever. And I'm like, all right, man, if you need a gift box, bro, I'll send you more. That type of stuff. Like, don't steal guys' shit in Mosul. It's austere enough. So really nothing. Just a lot of little things. It's like, you know, guys are together for a year and a half, 2 years. Guys start butting heads.
Of course.
Things. So to be honest with you, a lot of just stuff like, you know, hey, just let's control this. Talking to the lieutenant, like, hey, get the boys shit together up there. Nothing crazy because they were doing amazing things on the battlefield, and everybody was pleased with their actions. You know, they were getting high praises from you know, officers, you know, senior leadership in the community and the Army as well, Marines. So really nothing that would have, you know, like there was no Red Star clusters going on with Alpha Platoon on deployment.
Did you have conversations with Lieutenant Commander Bryce about any of this?
We did. It was all, you know, all small stuff. Him and I would always converse regarding, you know, the little things. But
Okay.
like we said, nothing until we got back. That was just like,
Okay.
why wouldn't anybody tell us anything before?
Okay.
You know.
So then explain. I mean, once you got back, how did that progress?
So I knew that there was a lot of hate and discontent within the platoon,
Mm-hmm.
but they were a very close knit group and they kept it at their level. And I'm all about platoon guys taking care of their business.
Yep.
You know. So I let them have it, and I was hearing some small rumblings. You know, just guys weren't happy. They confronted him about, you know, some of the dangers that they were put in. There was unacceptable risk involved, and I'm in that same like, all right, man, he'll be judged among his peers if that's the case. But right now, let's just focus on what we can control, and that's making it right with the guys. As far as making sure that guys don't think you're a thief, you know, stealing money, sunglasses, whatever it was, bullshit. I had heard everything was good. When we left and guys were checking out, everybody was happy with where they were going. They were good. I'm like, good, right? We don't have to work for him again. He's moving on. He's gonna make rank. He did well. He moved on. And then I started getting some rumblings and a couple calls from some guys like, hey man, like this isn't right. Like he's in position where he's teaching small unit tactics, right? He's teaching guys that we don't feel he's the man to teach and influence our community. I'm listening to him. I'm like, hey man, he fucking broke out #1 at the team. I've seen him operate. He knows what he's doing. He's very confident. He's very capable. And they're like, he's got to make rank. He's got to make senior chief. And I'm like, I can't stop that, man. His spit rep's all paper tiger. He's great. What do you want me to do? I can't do anything. Like, if you want me to, I need, like, at this point, you have to literally submit like a negative report on him. And what you're telling me is that he just put you guys in danger and he stole some fucking power bars. So I need more. Like, what is it that's bothering you guys? And then that's when they brought up the fact that there was some rules of armed conflict broken.
Okay. Any idea around when this conversation might have happened?
Christmas.
Okay.
Christmas time frame. So I got a little bit of detail from him. I didn't want to know a lot of it, to be honest with you. I was just like, hey man, like, all right, check. I went back, I reported that to my senior
Okay. Who was?
My command master chief, Steve Ward,
Okay.
Group 1. And from there, we immediately contacted our Jack.
Okay.
And from there, we gave her a scenario, right? This is a situation's been brought to us. What do we do? Where are we going with this? And she had said, this was Lieutenant Parker, our Group 1 Jack. Familiar with her?
Yeah.
Okay. She said, hey, you know, I don't want to quote her, but bottom line was something along the lines of, you know, we have a lot of people report, you know, did you see it? I did not. I was not there. This is coming from second, third party conversations. And she said, in order to move forward with this, the person who witnessed it should come and make a statement. We were like, check. So we went back to the guys and we gave them information. Bryce and I called a meeting with the boys and we said, hey man, this is NCIS phone number. This is the Warcom help desk.
Who were the guys who were there?
Craig Miller, their LPO. Apologize for not knowing first names, a lot of last names. Stoner.
Okay.
Schumach.
Yep.
Guy named Corey Pullman was in the meeting. Friends.
Okay.
Trying to remember where I was sitting, looking around the room clockwise. That was it. I want to say there might have been, Mr. Hanson, I believe Lieutenant Hanson was there in the room. Yeah, I think it was about five or six guys. Corey Scott. Corey Scott was one of the guys in the room too. So it was the bulk. And you know, when these guys come forward and say something, it's like, okay, these are credible kids, man. They're really good operators. They've got, you know, they got some experience, but they're just, you have to take what they're saying.
Especially coming forward, and I mean that many of them at the same time.
Absolutely. If it's one or two, it's like, all right, man, you guys are pissed off that he took your fucking Cliff Bars. But now I got 8 or 9 guys all telling the same story. It's like, all right, man, hey, I said, if you've seen it, I highly encourage you to report it.
Okay. Did anyone say whether or not they were going to report it? Did they indicate their path forward, anything at all?
No, I think we left there. You know, I didn't want to make a long meeting. I knew what myself and Lieutenant Commander Bryce knew exactly what it was we wanted to communicate, and we wanted to communicate that you have options, and the options here are to take this forward. It doesn't have to, and the reason we went this route was they wanted to do it the wrong way. They wanted to go through the Commodore on a Friday afternoon, and we stopped and we were like, hey, fellas, this isn't Commodore business. This is an NCIS problem. Take it to the 1-800 hotline, make a call. That's how it gets investigated. And then from there on, don't do anything written until they ask you to do it. If they want a written statement, write a statement. Like, just follow the instructions. There's a process, and I don't know the process. I'm sure there is, but we just want to make sure it's done right. Nothing got goofy.
Gotcha. Did they give? I mean, you say they gave you very little detail. What type of details do you remember receiving?
The details that I got was a stabbing of a insurgent who was under their care.
Okay. And they indicated this was while they were in Iraq during the deployment?
In Iraq, in Mosul.
Any idea around what time frame did they say? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
And so that was, that was the whole, I was, I guess to use the word upset would be lightly, but I was, like, fellas, why the fuck why would you hold this in, and for 7 months? And I think I know why they did. They were doing amazing things up there.
Yep.
I mean, they were very effective on the battlefield. The guys were responsible for a lot of stuff away from the flagpole, which is ideal for a SEAL operator to have very little oversight from the team, kind of being out there doing their thing. So they had a good deal. They were making good money. They were being effective on the battlefield, and I just think there was a lot of things that if they would have found out, we'd have pulled them immediately, and they would have been sitting on their ass for 7 months, or however long it was up to that point.
So you said that you were out with them for a little while. I mean, my understanding with the platoon is that things sort of progressed and got worse throughout deployment. Do you remember when you were out, or you would have been out in like combat situations?
It would have been, so it would have been a good probably 10 days of June, beginning of June, I think.
Okay.
That I went up there and went out there with him. I was out outside the wire with him every day.
So, if I'm correct, do you think you were up on working from the west side of Mosul. Do you remember?
West Mosul. It was Old Mosul.
Okay.
So this was towards the very end of Mosul.
Okay. So were you guys so I know that the platoon was in a couple positions. I know that they were working from the west side, coming in, and then at some point they got sort of
yeah.
put
So
back
we
into.
worked from east to west.
Yep.
And when SEAL Team 7 got there, we had taken we had High 5 SEAL Team 5.
Okay.
And we were moving across the bridge and continuing west.
Okay.
So by June, we had gotten there in February. So February, March, April, into May, going to June, we'd already cleared the majority of West Mosul proper. There was one part of town called Old Mosul.
Gotcha.
Very confined spaces.
Right up there against the river and everything.
Right up against the river. So on the operations that I went on, we were either working off the cleared side of the river, conducting surveillance, overwatch, counter sniper operations from the basically east side, going into west corner of West Mosul.
Okay.
Yeah. So early June.
Gotcha. Do you remember? Okay, so when you guys were in those the sniper positions, do you remember what Chief Gallagher was doing at the time?
Absolutely. I was spotting for him.
Okay.
And he was engaging, like if he did engage, we were engaging enemy fighters that were legit. And I was pleased with what they had going on.
Were they taking a lot of shots at that time? Were pretty busy?
We did not take a lot. Our guys ourselves took a lot of shots. I'd say we took a fair amount. I mean, I don't know what a lot is, but I mean, I've been on quite a few combat ops where we shot a lot and we didn't shoot a lot. But I mean, for sniper, it was just,
Okay.
We had movement, but we weren't shooting that long because, it was like a sniper. They knew we were coming. So now they're just getting down, staying low. They're tactically moving. But initially, I remember clearly, though, the only one time we actually engaged with sniper was we had a vehicle pull up. Dudes came out, grabbed AKs, started maneuvering, and that's when we engaged them because we were getting radio chatter. They were moving in on the flak clearing, so it was beautiful. It was actually like a perfect spot. And then shortly after we started engaging, that's when they all started laying low, and then counter snipers recognized our position. They took fire on us. I looked over at Eddie and said, "We're worth the squeeze, man. We're out of here." And he was like, "Roger that."
Do you remember what sort of position you were in? I mean,
it was a abandoned, probably. Everything's abandoned over there. It's kind of big. It was a large structure, big concrete, two-story building, but like very high ceilings. So when I say like a big two-story building, it's like probably get 30, 40 feet up in the air.
Gotcha.
Type deal.
Okay. When you were spotting for Chief Gallagher, you remember him taking any shots at all?
I do.
Okay.
I remember him missing one completely and hitting the wall in front of me. Just fucking gross.
I'm sure
he's
never gonna live that one down.
He heard some shit for that. Yeah, I do. I do remember. I'm not a spotter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm behind him on nods.
Yep.
Or on glass, so I'm just kind of watching. So I do remember him taking shots.
Okay. So was his? I know this is subjective, but in your opinion, what you saw, him versus the other guys who were on the rifles, was his rate of fire around the same? It seemed like he was the one taking most of the shots. I mean, any opinion, one or the other?
No.
Okay. Did it seem like he was firing excessively in any way?
No.
Okay. Again, this is part of. I know obviously when you're there, things are a little bit different. But part of what we've heard is that Chief Gallagher, I mean, his entire goal was to be on a sniper rifle and just to be taking shots at people all day, every day.
Yeah.
And,
I could see that. I could see that, and he was on glass the day he was there. I don't know when I was there with him. I mean, I was always there. So when I go out with my chiefs.
Yep.
It's part of my job is to assess and make sure my guys are doing right. By the mission, by their people. I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie was on glass when I wasn't around. But when I am around, I'm kind of the voice of reason, and I'm kind of up and out, looking out, making sure. So I don't know if when I was with him, he just felt more comfortable. The fact that Alazzawi's got this, he's making some calls, he's monitoring the radios, he's kind of trying to forecast on what the next plan is. So
absolutely. Just curious, how long do you guys know each other?
I met Eddie right before we platooned up. So I think I met Eddie in 2016 when he was going through Chiefs induction.
Okay.
That was when I introduced him and found out that he was one of my platoon chiefs. So at this point, I'd only known him up to a year. I've heard his name
Gotcha.
across the community
Yeah.
for a while, instructor stuff and everything else. But
Okay. All right, let's get back to after deployment, once everyone got back in the States. So the initial where you found out this information before you took it to Lieutenant Parker, was it the same group of individuals who was in the meeting, like you, Lieutenant Commander Bryce, and then the same enlisted members from the platoon who brought the report to you originally, and then you took it to Parker, Lieutenant Parker, and then you guys all met again? Or who brought that information to you originally?
originally, Craig Miller.
Okay.
Craig Miller, the LPO.
Was it the two of you meeting one-on-one? Was it you meeting with
Initially started with a phone call.
Okay.
And then I followed it up with face-to-face just because I was like, all right, man, we need to talk. Like,
Okay.
This is crazy. So initially it was a lot of the rumblings of just his credibility as an operator. There was just not being the guy for the job, and I could see is he can be aggressive.
Yeah.
Like I said before, all the names that I mentioned, solid dudes. I had to go off of that. So that's when I followed it up. But my conversations with these guys was still like, fellas, man, like, you gotta remember, like, we're in the Navy, he's gonna make senior chief. He's got orders at SALC. So what do you want to do with this? I don't know what, bad tactics looks like. I mean, I know what it looks like, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I've seen him train.
No.
And he stands out as a top performer. I mean, I had very little say in how far he excels in his career when I've got my command master chiefs and my skippers praising him like, this is the hottest chief we have. It's like, yeah, I mean, he's good.
Yeah.
Initially it was just, they were very vague. And I think they were doing that possibly to protect some of the officers that were there. I think they understood the frag radius.
Yeah.
And we told them that afterwards. I'm like, fellas, you guys understand, frag radius on this is fucking major. Like, here we go. Just so you know what's going on. I want everyone to be prepared for this. And that's when, after we told them that, that's when they came forward and said, this is what happened.
Okay.
And then that was when, like, all right, check. And then that's when we started pulling him from the SALC podium. We started pushing these guys, like, hey man, it's on you guys to come forward and do the right thing.
Okay. Do you know, Lieutenant Commander Bryce, it was the two of you sitting down with these guys. Was there anyone else you consider in a command position that was there?
No, we were the two senior guys.
What about like Lieutenant Portier or Portier? Portier, I think.
Portier was he was in on some of the meetings we had.
Okay.
I don't think he was. I don't recall him being at the meeting I had with the enlisted guys, and I think we kept it on the enlisted ranks. I wasn't even sure if I wanted Mr. Bryce there.
Mm-hmm.
He was dealing with the officer side. I was talking to the enlisted side.
Okay.
But when all the guys finally came forward, that's when Mr. Bryce and I came in, and that's when we presented them very little talk. Two options.
Yep.
NCIS and Warcom.
Do you remember when you and Lieutenant Colonel Bryce laid it out to Lieutenant Parker? I mean, did you explain that it was?
That was just myself and my command master chief. Mr. Bryce wasn't there.
Okay.
But I had told Mr. Bryce that I was going to call the JAG after
Okay.
a conversation. So there were, like I said, there were a lot of conversations that I had just with the enlisted guys.
Of course.
So I ran everything through Mr. Bryce. Just said, hey, this is what this is what the guys approached me with.
Give him the details of basically
Give me the details.
yeah.
I'm going to take this back to my master chief. We work for two different commands.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of those like, hey, I'm going to notify, because we have some of these guys are BUD students. So there's a BUDS change. BUDS are instructors.
Yep.
So there's a BUDS chain of command, and then there's my chain of command and group. So we wanted to make sure that we were both parallel at the same time, so that way nothing was coming down either way. So we just said, hey, high five.
Makes perfect
I'm
sense.
telling my boss, you tell your boss, we're moving forward.
Okay. So how to progress them? If that's around Christmas time, how did it progress over the next couple of months?
Well, I mean, Christmas time in through the holidays, it was just a lot of rumblings about, just the credibility piece. There was nothing criminal brought out until, I can only estimate February, might be March, when finally guys were like, rules of armed conflict, like sketchy shit. And that's when we gave them their options.
So that meeting then, so it was originally, you had heard about this back in December, and you think that meeting where you guys sat down with them and gave them the NCIS contact information was February or March?
I think so.
Okay, I just want to make sure,
Yep.
because I had interpreted that meeting happened in December, Christmas time-ish, so.
No, the meeting we had in the classroom, so the meeting we had with them in the classroom regarding their options was, I would say March, April, March.
Okay.
March would be safe.
Okay. Did you see the sit rep or anything when this came out? When it was finally reported to NCIS?
I saw the op rep. Yeah, the op rep.
That's,
yeah, I didn't see, but very vague. They gave like an SO
Yeah,
that was
just
involved
like-
in a potential armed conflict issue overseas. I mean, I knew right away, like, okay, I mean, I'm the one that, Bryce and I recommended, hey, you guys initiate a investigation, so all right, it wasn't surprising.
So when that came out, what was the timeline? Was that a couple weeks after this meeting? Was that within a few days?
I think it was pretty fast. I couldn't be exact, but it was pretty quick. I mean,
Okay.
well, actually, so I take that back. So my meeting with the group, we left there with these guys hashing out themselves on how they wanted to move forward.
Okay.
From the time they left that meeting to the time where I heard that they're going to do it, I think it was pretty quick. But there was a gap between our initial meeting, because these guys put their heads together and they were gonna talk before they committed to this, because I think they knew, like, hey man, like this is big.
Yep.
So yeah, that little window right there, I'm unsure of.
Okay. So how about, what was your interaction with Chief Gallagher from the time he got back from deployment up until the time when this investigation was really reported to us?
My interaction with Chief Gallagher is very, very little. And Eddie's not the type of guy that I would hang out with outside of work. Him and I, we've never drank a beer outside of work.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not close like that.
Okay.
So,
did you talk to him every once in a while?
Every once in a while, yeah, and it's mostly, professional development stuff. I was still his senior chief, became master chief at the time, so any conversations we had revolved around professional development stuff. Like, hey, what should I do? Should I put a package in? Things like that, of that nature.
Okay.
And then obviously once he had heard that NCIS was getting involved in that issue, very limited conversation. Just kind of, he went off the grid completely. But then when he would engage, it was regarding retirement stuff, regarding TBI stuff, just administrative.
Okay. So was there ever a sit down with him and letting him know, like, hey, look, this is going on, investigation's starting, here's what's going to happen, here's where we're moving forward, anything along those lines?
Yeah, I talked to him at Trade Ed, after the credibility piece. So just the guy stressing the fact that he's not the right guy for the podium. We went over and talked. We pulled him. It was the whole reason they got pulled. It wasn't just that the 6 or 7 guys that talked the credibility piece.
Yeah.
It was more that sewing circle talks, and now he's in a position where he's instructing platoon guys that are coming through,
Yep.
and these guys are influencing him, and now I got a guy on the podium, and everyone in the room is just like, discrediting him as he talks. It was one of those things where, like, hey, we should pull him, because people are talking all kinds of shit about how fucked up he is.
Yep.
So I talked to him shortly after I pulled him in and had a meeting with his command master chief, Jeff Carter.
Okay.
And just said, hey man, you're getting pulled. take a knee. You're gonna go to training for a while. The boys are rumbling, and you're not the right guy for the job.
Was there any conversation to let them know, like, hey, this is going towards like a full-on investigation, that this is not something that's going away? I mean, anything, I mean,
No,
directly,
because
indirectly implying that like an NCIS investigation, anything like that?
No, because at the time I wasn't fully aware of all the things that were going on. I knew there was theft. I knew there was, bad tactics,
Yep.
bad leadership, questionable shit going on out there that, guys were in unnecessary danger. And I got, the masses are all spread out now in different platoons, and I got an instructor who's got zero credibility, so
Gotcha.
that's when we pulled it. But there was nothing that would have, like, NCIS related at the time.
How about Lieutenant Portier? You worked with him very much?
That was the first, this last one was the first time I maybe met the guy.
Do you know like what his relationship is like with Gallagher?
What I knew, they were probably the two of the tightest platoon chief in OIC that I'd ever been around at the time. What their relationship is now, I'm not sure.
Okay. When some of this stuff started happening, what was your impression of Jake's reaction to these allegations against Gallagher?
I'd say my impression of Jake was, I think looking back, I think he could have done more
Okay.
to kind of control that as an OIC. But I don't know if he just let the experience of that seasoned chief and got caught up in everything else, all the awesome stuff they were doing. Have somebody come in like myself and shut it all down and take over.
Yeah.
Because I would have loved to have taken over as platoon chief in a second up there. So I think that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
They're afraid of just somebody ruining what they had going on.
So that was actually what was eventually getting at. But what I mean is, when any discussions that happened when you were back in the States, and when there were discussions that this is what's being alleged against G. Gallagher, do you think you interpreted it, or that Lieutenant Portier interpreted it as like, yeah, I know that those things, people have been talking about this for a long time, people were talking about it on deployment? Was it something that he clearly was aware of, or did he act
he
like...
knew he was aware, I believe.
Okay.
I believe he knew that there was rumblings, there was guys that were displeased with how that leadership was running the platoon.
Okay. What about the specific armed conflict violations? Did he reference that at all? Did he reference that he heard about?
He did not. From what I understand, he was not there.
Okay. Did he know that it had happened? Did he know that these guys were alleging it happened? Not necessarily.
I can't say for sure if he knew that overseas. I can only speculate that he did,
okay.
Being where they were and the guys talking. But I can't answer that.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to indirectly get at is, if he's their OIC. It's clearly like a tight platoon. It's not too many guys. And if all of a sudden you get back and months later you hear about this armed conflict violation that you knew nothing about, you can imagine that would be a huge shock, right? And just imagine a hypothetical situation where you had absolutely no clue. Was his reaction as if like, yeah, I knew this was going on, or was this like, oh my God, this is the absolute first time I'm hearing that any of this is happening? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do. I'm trying to. I didn't have much interaction with Jake.
Okay.
To be completely honest with you, I would say that he was, regardless of what, I don't know whether or not he knew or not, but I would say that I think he felt pretty let down about whatever happened overseas with their platoon.
Okay.
I got that about him. Yeah, Jake, just like Eddie, all-star, an amazing officer, an amazing leader, and for a guy like that to have the experience he has and come home and decide he wants to retire, it was just like, all right, man, he's done.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was what he saw, what he did, just being married, new kid, and everything, just got them all rolled into one.
Do you think
I can only speculate.
Sorry. Do you think it has anything to do with this investigation?
I don't believe so, because I think he had put his papers in before the investigation.
A couple days after. As soon as this was reported, he put it in his papers a couple days after.
Well, there you go.
Just so that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, yeah, I understand that. I had heard he was talking about doing it. I did not know that it was after.
Did he ever indicate any? And again, I understand you have little interaction with him regarding this. Did he ever indicate in any way that he was concerned that they should have reported this sooner?
I don't recall having a conversation with him. I did not have a conversation with him regarding what he should have, could have, would have, wished he would have done.
Okay.
To be honest with you, just know that personally, from what I know, Jake didn't seem like himself.
Okay.
Just let down, I think, is the best way to describe. I think he was taking the whole, just the way that platoon turned out, man. I mean, you get one shot as an OIC, and to have your platoon literally fall apart at the end and literally hate each other and not talk, it's just like, fuck, that was I mean, yeah, he had some great effects on the battlefield, but, that's the one shot you get.
Yeah, that's gotta be tough. I can imagine. What about the other officers? What about the other guys?
I have not seen, so Mr. McNeil,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McNeil immediately checked out of the team. So he was not there for any of the meetings. I wish he would have been. I would have loved to talk to him. So I put him through SQT, and he's young. That was his first combat deployment, first deployment ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would have loved to talk to Mr. McNeil. He went to postgraduate school.
Gotcha.
I did not reach out to him via phone.
Talking like up in Monterey.
Monterey, yeah, Monterey. And then Mr. Hansen,
Mm-hmm.
he works at group with me as well, Lieutenant Hansen, and new guy, little hockey player, little slow. I mean, I'm sure he's a great skater, but he was a little slow.
Okay.
Love him to death, but I think my conversations with him were when I did ask him, like, hey, were you there? Did you see that? He was not there. However, he had heard about it. When he heard about it, I don't know. And when we had the conversation, I think my conversation with him was just kind of more professional development, like, hey, you're an officer.
Yeah.
I don't care who the fuck, who's the chief, who's the senior chief, you're an officer.
Yeah.
So, that's your job, man. You're top cover. You got to do the right thing out there. It was pretty much lesson learned, man.
Was that that interaction, asking him if he was there, was that like around the time when these guys first came to you?
Yeah, this was all, because like I said, I was hitting up most of the enlisted guys. Yeah, I was having to leave the office. None of those guys were working Group 1.
Gotcha.
So I would, he was the only guy. So just kind of in the office, like, hey, step in the conference room and let's ride for a minute type of thing.
Okay.
Just trying to get a feel for what the officer side of the house was. Mr. Bryce was talking to most of those guys.
Gotcha. Any interaction with Chief Gallagher since this has all gone down?
Phone, text.
Okay.
And I ran into him once in the parking lot of Group.
Okay.
Since he checked into a new command.
What have those interactions been like?
All professional development stuff outside of the investigation. I had one text interaction with him. Him reaching out and saying, "Hey, did you hear that my house got raided?" And I said I had heard something along those lines. And he was just, "Oh man, this is crazy." Just kind of playful, whatever. Not entertaining a conversation like, "Yeah, it sucks, man. I hope everything's good."
Okay.
Type of deal.
Nothing.
Very limited.
Yeah.
Very limited. He's staying pretty quiet. Just like most of the guys, I think, I don't see him, hear him. I don't get any texts from anybody. I think somebody's coaching these guys, like, just do your thing, man. Let the NCIS take it and go from there.
I think this question, especially based off what you just said, is already answered, but he hasn't said any details to you directly about the investigation and the incident that happened in any way. Did you ever ask him what happened that day or that day?
In not so many words, I said, "Hey man, the guys are coming out with some pretty strong allegations against you."
Okay.
And he said, "Whatever it is that they're talking about, I can clear it. I'm comfortable that I can clear it."
Okay. So let's talk about that individual who was stabbed while in there. Did he say anything about that?
Very little.
What
To where
was
that He was working. They were working on a guy,
Okay.
and the guy got aggressive, and
So he says that. Did he acknowledge to you that he had killed the guy, basically?
no.
Did he imply that he had killed him?
Well, if he implied it or I took it as that, but
Okay.
and not so many words.
Okay.
I fucked him up.
So he said the individual got aggressive.
Yeah, started freaking out while they were bandaging him up, going for a gun, something along those lines.
Okay. Did he? Did he say in what manner he messed him up? Whatever he did. I mean, did he say what he did to the guy?
No.
Do you remember what his words were?
No, not verbatim. No, I don't.
And so you're saying that it was kind of like you interpreted it as he
I mean,
killed the guy.
I would have. Yeah, I mean, you know, it was.
Any
They
idea?
were treating a wounded guy. He went nuts, went for a weapon. I can only imagine what I would do in that case. So I just was like, all right, check, man.
Okay.
So I said, it's your story, man. Be able to tell it because at the end of the day, man, that's the allegations that are coming out on you. And I left it at that. I didn't want a lot of details.
Gotcha.
My level of involvement was, all right, check. The guys are displeased. There's some allegations regarding rules of armed conflict. I believe they're going to start an investigation. And he came back with, I can clear that.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's just him telling his own story in his head.
Okay. So I'm sorry if I get a little old on these questions that I'm going to
Yeah,
ask.
don't apologize.
Because the fact that you guys have talked about these actual incident is it's actually really important. Do you remember, first of all, when this conversation happened? Approximately.
I can tell you where.
Sorry.
Trade it in
Okay.
the classroom.
Okay. So it was was this when he was assigned over at Trade It?
Yeah, I think he'd already been pulled from the podium, and he was in training, and we were exchanging some texts along the lines of, hey, how long is this bullshit gonna last, man? I gotta get back to work. We got a class coming up along those lines. I happened to be over there and seen him, and I just pulled him aside and kind of gave him what I knew.
Okay.
This was earlier than. This was way early before the investigation was going on. This was I'd say it was after the meeting I had with the core group of dudes.
Okay.
After we had said, hey man, these are the contact numbers you guys can have. It's on you guys. You guys saw it. You guys report it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they went back and whatever they did to sit on it. I don't know how long they sat on it. I don't recall how many days or even weeks went by before they all came together and said, hey, we need to do this.
Okay.
So it was kind of between that time frame.
All right. Did he seem surprised that this was the incident they were talking about?
Nah, he didn't show any like what? Like he wasn't.
Okay. Did he specifically say that the guy went for a weapon? Do you remember him saying that?
Something along those lines.
Okay.
He reached for my pistol, grabbed my belt along those lines where I keep my pistol. I think maybe I implied that he reached for my belt, which we carry our sidearm on.
Okay.
So.
Anyone else there when that conversation happened?
No, just him and myself.
Any other things that he said during that conversation that you remember, even if they're not related to this?
No, we kept it pretty much along the lines of just like, this is bullshit. I need to get back to work. I've got a job to do.
Did he make any comments about the other platoon members, junior guys, about anything about they're full of shit? They're just got an axe to pick with him. I mean, are they just trying to bring him down?
I think if there was anything I could recall, it was distinct. Everybody's a pussy, Daddy. I mean, so that was probably along those lines. Like,
Yeah.
he was just, if you're not Eddie Gallagher, Eddie Gallagher's a mean machine, man. Everybody's a pussy. So it's probably one of the things I loved about him.
Yeah.
Fucking just every piece of hard dude.
You got anything? Pretty thorough. Yeah. Anything else that sticks out? Any other interactions with Eddie that you had in any way?
Like I say, my interaction with Eddie is limited to work, uniform stuff. I don't see him outside of work. I don't hang with him.
Okay.
Very little. And since he's been off the radar. Just kind of laying low, so
Gotcha.
can't recall anything other than what I talked about.
Okay. Have you ever had any issues with any of these other guys that came forward originally? You mentioned Craig Miller and a bunch of the other guys.
Absolutely not.
That's why it's
like
lends credibility.
Absolutely. That's why that's why everybody, even including above me, was like, all right, man, let's dig into this and find out what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
And then when the rules of armed conflict came out, even just the credibility piece, even just the little things like tactically, being proficient and doing the right thing on the battlefield and not putting guys at unnecessary risk. It was all, even coming from guys that were inexperienced in combat, still like led me to believe like, all right, man, maybe he was doing some questionable shit out there.
Yep.
Like, because I mean, he's a fighter. I mean, to be honest with you, man, he's a guy you want on the battlefield in that respect. Like tactically, just driven. Like he's smart on the battlefield and that tactically.
I mean, I think a lot of these guys have said that, like, when they found out they were going to a platoon with Chief Gallagher, they were, ecstatic that this was exciting
Absolutely.
thing. His reputation in the community.
Absolutely.
This is the guy you want to be in charge of your platoon.
Some great experience. Just like, all right, man, if that's the guy that's going to lead us multiple tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, just, under list of good stuff.
Have you, in the time you've known him, so I think you said 2016-ish when you met?
It would have been September. It would have been exactly September 15th, 2016, pinning day. That's the day he went through initiation.
Gotcha.
So I met him September 15th, 2016. Because I was at his chief's.
Impressive.
It happens every year.
Gotcha.
That's the same date.
Gotcha. That explains it. So since September 15, 2016, do you think there's a huge change in Gallagher? Have you noticed a big change as far as him? I don't mean necessarily like in combat situations. I mean how you see him now versus how you saw him back then when he's over at NSW.
No, he's a hard dude. I think since all this came out, maybe if I do it, I'm usually pretty playful.
Mm-hmm.
Usually like fuck around, talk a little shit.
Yeah.
Not so much, but I mean I can see where the guy's got enough on his mind. He's not in the mood to joke, and I'm not going to engage in the playfulness that I usually.
What about when you spent those number of days there in June of 2017 with them? Did it seem like he was? I know that they're in a combat zone, and they're obviously it's a much more intense situation in their focus. But did it seem like there was anything that had overwhelmingly changed with him? Did it seem like he was off? Did it seem like anything was?
Yeah, because we had discussed that. Because he's working the guys hard,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've been hearing rumblings of some kind of subpar leadership and some things going on up there that were questionable as far as how a platoon chief should run his guys. We had made, like I said before, we had conversations like, hey man, bring the guys together, hear their bitches, hear their gripes, and come compromise, come up with a solution to this, because it's 10, 12 dudes.
Yeah.
So he listened to me, Roger that. He was pushing his guys. They were going out every day when he didn't need to go out. Guys, I think at the time expressed the desire for a kind of a blue and gold. Like, hey, let's do shifts. We got enough guys. So I said, hey, if you guys can make it, if you can manage it, I highly suggest you do it, man. These guys have been turning and burning. Something can happen. Complacency.
Yep.
So he said, Roger that. So he came up with a blue and gold, gave the guys what they wanted. Half the guys would go back to Erbil
Yep.
and Bourne Base. The other half would stay in Mosul proper. And about once a week, they would switch out. Key leaders, give them a little downtime, which was good to go. Well needed break. Break things up. So when I got up there, was we were still discussing. He thought it was bullshit. The guys were getting downtime. I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here, type of stuff. And I'm like, hey, I get it, man. You're committed, but you're not everybody's shoe. Guys need a break. You're doing the right thing. Give it to them, and if things pick up and you got to bring them back, bring them back.
So did he stay there pretty much the whole time, as far as you know? I mean, if you've got the team.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think he moved.
So basically, he didn't give himself.
But the officers didn't go back either. So
Okay.
yeah, and I wouldn't have expected an environment like that for a chief to leave. So that wouldn't be like not normal.
Yeah, I mean, of course,
Like, hey, you're chief, man. You got to run the guys. You're going on ops. I'm not gonna let a 2 platoon E6, as an LPO run that. I would have expected him to be there. I would have stayed there the entire time myself.
Agreed. Okay. Anything else sticks out from while you were in Iraq with them that's of interest, concern? Okay.
No. I mean, I wish I would have been with them more. I mean, I liked operating with the guys, and I wish I would have had a better idea on what was really going on. It's just unfortunate that
Gotcha.
it led to this. So
Absolutely. All right, sir. Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
absolutely.
Sorry that you had to drive over here.
No, not at all. It was easy. So.
Yeah, we'll get you out of here. Can't imagine we'll have to do a follow-up, but with the scope of this
You
investigation.
got my number. If you want to take my office, I leave my cell phone in the car
Okay.
all day, so I don't have a cell phone in the building. So my office number is 537.
Yep.
1544. That's my direct line. Usually, if I bounce around a lot, but if you leave a voicemail, you can hit me up and I'll call you back.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, sir.
Yeah.